Well, today we're going to have a look at making pens. Now, I think everyone that does turning has got to make a pen. You've got to get it out of your system somehow. So I think the best way to kick off is to make probably the easiest and most versatile pen being called a Slimline Pen. The Slimline Pen kits are probably the most cost efficient. You get a kit of parts, all the parts that you need. Costs a couple of pounds. I'd normally buy them 5 sets at a time. It comes in different types of trim. There's a gold one, you can get one with silver, and as you can see on these examples here, you can make a wide variety and style it exactly as to what you feel like making. So I'm going to take you through Slimline pens. You've got to kick off with using a blank. This is a piece of blank wood. And you'll notice there are quite a few different tools that are used in this process. I'll keep a list of those tools in the links that you can access those and get them from your local suppliers. It's a lot of fun. I generally batch make them, so I'll make 5 at a time or 10 at a time. It just makes it a bit easier because some of the processes, especially the gluing, I like to glue up and leave it overnight to dry to get really hard. And also when it comes to the finishing, I put the CAA glue on for finishing, and again I like 24 hours between when I've applied the glue before I start polishing it down. So I generally do 5 or 10 at a time, do a bit of a batch and then carry on with some other work in between while it dries. Follow the video. I hope it works for you. It's a lot of fun for me. Nice little gift that you can make, inexpensive gift, but something that's worthwhile giving away, sharing a bit of wood, and exercising your skill. Alright, so we need pen blanks. Bit of wood, 20 by 20 millimeters by 150 millimeters. So it's just under an inch by 6 inches. Now, you can use any bit of timber. I've got some leftover bits of an old table that is in fact made out of yellow wood, South African yellow wood. I'm going to make some blanks out of that. And the lovely thing about pen making, you don't need to, this is just a bit of scrap wood, but there's no such thing as scrap wood. There's this wood that hasn't found its end purpose yet. So I'm going to make a couple of blanks from that. I've got another bit of that same yellow wood that has horribly been stained, but anyway, I can get something out of that. And then a neighbor of mine from down the road gave me this bit of lovely old cherry that he had lying in his garden, and I'm going to work some blanks out of this. So I'll have to cut this and get some square flat edges and make blanks by 20 by 20 by 150. So that's what I'm going to be doing next. Not a lot of turning involved. You can buy blanks from shops generally already sized, so I'm not going to spend a lot of detail telling you how to cut a piece of wood. You should be able to do that, but that's next up, a couple of blanks. So I took the big lump of cherry that I had and I've just started to work it down on my bandsaw to get 2 surfaces that are 90 degrees to each other. And I'm now going to come and rip and get my 20 by 20 lengths, and then I will cut them to length. Okay, so here we've got the 2 barrels. They measure about 105 millimeters. So I need to have a piece of wood about 120 millimeters long to accommodate the 2 of them. So what I'm going to do is, from these bits of stock that I took off the bandsaw, this is the cherry and here is the yellow wood. I'm going to cut lengths that are 120 millimeters long. And you've got to select carefully. Obviously, this bit of wood here has got a biscuit that was left over from one of the previous joints. So I'll start there and see how many I can get. And I'm going to make these lengths of 120 mils long, which is good for this slimline. And then I'll mark it up and then split them that I can turn them into pens. Now, the next thing to do is to mark your center point where you're going to cut the blank. You can see that the bit of wood is just a little bit longer than the blank. You'll see that you need a little bit of extra on the end to avoid any blowout. Put a mark down the center, put a cross because that face you want to always keep orientated, and then mark your blank. And I've gone with ABC. This is my third blank C. You mark all of your blanks. The next thing you do is you're going to cut them off in that point. So here we've got the blank. I'm going to drill. I've got a 7mm drill in my Jacob's chuck. I'm going to drill into the face that I've marked with the arrow. I mount that in my soft jaws. These are jaws that are, you can use steel ones. These are plastic 3D printed ones that I've made. And I'm going to drill this at about 700 RPM. And I'm going to drill a nice clean hole straight through to the other side. Okay, so there we've got a nice hole to the center. G, get the corresponding G, put it in the jaws. There you go. And you repeat that for all of your stock. Next up, we need to glue these brass tubes inside the wooden blocks. Now, you can either use CA glue or epoxy glue. I prefer epoxy glue because it gives you a bit more time to align everything and sort it out. And it's, I think, fills the gaps better than a CA glue. But the one thing that you need to do is just take the shine off the outside of the tube. And for that, I've got a bit of 120 abrasive. And you just give it a rough up. Give it something for the glue to grip. Take the sheen off the tube, and then you are ready to glue. Do that to the two tubes. And that way you can be sure that the tubes will be well glued and have a nice application inside your wooden blank. Because these can actually move if this doesn't get done properly, and then you destroy basically a complete kit. Those are done. So to glue up, I'm going to use a twin pack epoxy. This is got a 5-minute pot life, equal amount of hardener and glue. Using a flat screwdriver, I'm going to give it a good old stir. I can show that it's completely and properly mixed. I'm just using a little bit of plastic to keep my wood clean. Now it's about 10 degrees today, so it's not too hot, so it's going to definitely give me a bit of time. Getting the blank, put some epoxy on it. And then putting it in the tube. Now you want to make sure that you get it over the complete length of the tube. So rotate it as you put it in. You can see that it's got a bit of overflow at the end here, so it definitely is going all the way in. I'm going all the way to the end, and I've got to make sure that I push it into the hole and it's not sticking out on the other end. A bit of excess glue, I don't want that glue there, it's going to be a bit of a pest to get rid of later. You need to have it clean. Glue out the hole. The whole process of cleaning that up later. By doing that, you've got a nice solid fix, and you repeat that for the other tubes, and you get your blank completely filled. So we have the pair of blanks with their inserts fitted inside. The epoxy is cured, it's been over a day. The next thing we need to do is trim off these front faces. It's called barrel trimming. There's a nice tool you can buy called a barrel trimmer. These come with 4 or 6 cutters. I like the 4 cutters because you can sharpen them quite easily. There's lots of space to sharpen them every now and again. And it has a piece that cleans out the inside of the barrel, because the inside of the barrel is where your parts are going to seat themselves, the parts that assemble the pen, so it's important that that's clean. And then you put that in the barrel and it will cut a nice square face, and you've got to cut the face just until it touches the barrel, that the barrel you can see is just been cleaned. And then you do that and you reverse it on the other side, you do them all 4, and you will have nicely trimmed barrels ready for the next phase. So that's what I'm going to do now. So what I did there, I just loosened the chuck, just because it wasn't quite central to the barrel trimmer, just to take the forces off the chuck, but it is still enough to retain it and stop it rotating. You can also do this in a drill press, but while you've got it all set up in the chuck, it works fine. So here I'm going to do the same. Again, you can see it's quite loose. That means it's at least lined up and centered. So, nicely squared up, just touching there, and I'm going to do that to the other piece as well. So there we have it. Still got the orientation, trimmed barrels nicely, and next we're just going to deburr those edges. Now it's important to keep your barrels nice and clean, and when it comes to assembly you want everything to assemble quite smoothly. So I've got a deburring tool. You can buy these on Amazon, and they're really useful if you've got a 3D printer, particularly to clean up edges, but anywhere in the workshop that you work well. And you basically just deburr the inside edge there, and the same on this side, and it just makes for smoother assembly later on. And do the other one. There we go, nice and clean. Next up, I'm going to remove the chuck. I'm going to put it in the mandrel, and I'll leave the jaws in the chuck because I'll use this later to assemble the pen. So here's a mandrel. It's actually it's got the larger Morse taper 2 shape on the end of it. I've got a Morse taper 2 to Morse taper 1 adapter because I've got a small Morse taper 1 headstock. You basically fit that in your headstock, make sure it seats nice and firmly. Along the length of the mandrel, you need to now do the assembly of the bushes. Each pen has a specific set of bushes that match pretty closely the diameter of the parts that you're going to be assembling. In this case here, the bush is about 7.2 millimeters and the diameter of the nib is about 7.7. So there's a little bit of clearance that you've got to work into the design. And what I do is I use larger spacer bushes first just to get a bit of distance from the head. Then I use one of the specific pin relevant spacers. Now I'm going to assemble my pen in the same orientation as it's going to be built when I do build. So keeping the faces aligned, I put bushes in there and build up the assembly. Now there are two types of ways you can hold this. You can either hold it by using normally supplied brass nut, and it compresses the shaft, and you can hold it that way, and then use a live center to just hold the center. Or the other way, which is done, is you use a thing called a mandrel saver. Just take that off, and this is normally when you buy a mandrel, it will have a set of bushes and it will have the nut. But the mandrel saver basically is a live center with a hole down the center. And what you can do with that, you fit it onto the end of your mandrel or in your tailstock, and it now compresses the brass bushes against the spacers. So the whole thing is in compression, and the mandrel shaft itself is not in any tension or compression. Sometimes with this, when you tighten up the mandrel shaft, it gets into tension, and you can get a bit of buckling in the shaping of these of the wood. So I prefer this. It's also quicker and easier to do, and you can adjust it as you need to adjust it. You can see here that this is now the first time that we'll actually be doing some real proper turning. So this is the kind of shape you're going to be aiming for. The first thing I'm going to do is just to create a barrel, and I want it to be at this diameter here, so it's about 10 millimeters. It's a bit yeah, just around 10 millimeters. So I'm going to turn this down parallel to 10 millimeters. Now you can use any kind of tool you want. I'm going to be using my Richard Findlay signature tool, which is basically a, what is this dimension wise? It's a 10 millimeter parting tool. It's got rounded edges. It's quite nice to roll, so you can use it as a skew chisel or a parting tool. And I'm going to use it just because it's a skew chisel. I'm working above the center, and I'm going to rough down the wood to get to my 10 millimeter diameter. So on with a bit of protection. Having a look at the wood, it's having a little bit of tear out. You can also hear a bit of a vibration. That's the problem with the turning on the mandrel. It is long, so it has a bit of flex, and you need to be mindful of that. There's a sanding that'll sort out a lot of the finishing in the end, and it's also a little bit wet. So I've measured it now, 13% humidity. We will work our way down and get something usable. Comparing that to this pen, this is a bit chunkier. I might just go for a chunkier, more masculine sort of shaped pen. And now I've got to shape it down to this diameter here to match up with that there. So I'm going to do a bit of shaping and see how we go. So next up we're going to sand. I'm going to start at 120. You do quite a bit of very careful sanding with the pen. I'm going to take it in the natural wood up to 600, and then we're going to seal it. Bring the speed down on the sanding to about, I'll come down to about 800 RPM, 700 RPM, and take it from there. And then between radial sanding, I'll sand on the axis just to get any of the cut marks out. Go to 180. Axial sanding. $240. I've noticed I've got a little bit of a tear out over here. What I'll do when I assemble the pen, I'll use the catch that you put over the top to secure the pen in your pocket. I'll align with that and hide it underneath it. The alternative is to start again, but try not to do that if you can. 400 grit. Cherry. And 600. Okay, there we have it. The next thing we're going to do is disassemble this from the mandrel and prepare it to seal. So take all the bits off, keep the orientation the same as you had before, so carefully placing it in the same orientation for the alignment. And what I've got here is some homemade nylon bushing. It's just a bit of nylon that I cut. And what this does, it basically allows you to get put your CA glue on without it gluing to your whole mechanism. The CA glue doesn't stick to nylon particularly well. And just space it there. Now we're going to do the application of the CA glue. So, you're ready for the CA glue. It's assembled with the nylon bushes. Get all the dust off. You don't want any dust. Any dust will turn white with the CA glue. Good dust. And now what I do is I apply 5 coats of thin CA glue, followed by 5 coats of thicker CA glue. This is a super glue, thin. So, turn the speed right down on my lathe. My lowest is 435 RPM. And at this low speed, I'm going to hold the cloth underneath, and I'm going to put a little drop of CA glue on here and get it spreading evenly down the length of the wood. So the CA glue is nice and hard. I've left more than 24 hours. Now what I need to do is just to get this smooth, because it's got a lot of marks in it. Get it smooth. I'm going to use 180 paper and really lightly. In fact, no, that's too much. I'm going to go to 240, and I'm going to shape that and get that nice and smooth. Same with 320. Of course, now you're not sanding down to the wood, you're just working with the CA glue, so you don't have to work with the grain. You can just knock it through. So you're really careful not to go right through. 400 fish. Next up, we're going to use these micro mesh pads. These are cushion abrasive pads. They go from 1500 grit to 12,000. They're really fine. They're all color coded, and I'm going to be using water, and I'll show you how that's done now. First thing, of course, is just to make sure you've got them in the right sequence. So we now come to the wet sanding. The water bath has two purposes. One, obviously, keeps
the material cool so you don't get any overheating, but the water actually washes any tailings or filings that you might have away, so it keeps it clean and you don't get any drag lines. Now you've got to really work quite gently, because if you work too hard you're going to take all the CA off and then you're down to raw wood again, which is not what you want to do. As soon as you do that, of course, you're going to start again. So I'm going to go gently with 1500. So working all the way up and down. You'll see there's a little line of residue that's built up on the pad. It means you are taking material off. And there we go. Working through the colours, colour chart at hand. A little clean, 1800. Okay, not quite there yet, so that's the pads. Final step is to use a micro gloss liquid abrasive. You can get a lot of these liquids. It's for the says for the removal of scratches, haziness from plastic surfaces. What I'm going to do is give it a good shake that you get everything in suspension. Got a clean cloth. I'm going to apply some to the cloth, and then I'm going to do the final polishing of this now. You push the speed up a little bit, so we're running at about 1400 RPM, and just lightly polish the whole surface. See, it's getting a nice sheen there now, nice polish. Do it on the other side, make sure you're right down to the bottom, right up to the top, and a good polish. Remove any excess with a nice piece of dry cloth. And there you have it. No scratches. It's maintained the surface protection. Piece of cherry. Now take it out of the mandrel. So you're coming to the pen assembly. Now, if you remembered which way you kept the orientation of these and you didn't put them down incorrectly as I did, you would just place them down here and know that they're perfectly lined up. However, I did get mine mixed up, so I had to work around the different permutations, but I have found the grain alignment. So I've got them aligned in with the grain. I've also checked this one end has got a little bit of a blemish that I'm going to try and hide with the clip. So I want to keep that in mind. And for the assembly process, I'm going to use my same pen jaws. I have made this little adapter here, which has got a little female port there, which is the same size as the nib. So I'm going to place that in the jaws. I'm going to get the parts of my kit. I'm going to put them on this cloth. Now I'll use a cloth just to stop the bits rolling away and falling on the floor. You unpack these little packets with all the nice pieces well stored, and you put them basically in the same order that you're going to be assembling the pen. This Slimline pen is quite an easy one. It's got a central collar. It's got the clip on the end, which is held in with this little plug over there. So that goes in there into the clip on the end. It's got the central collar. On the front piece here you've got the nib, which, well, not the nib, it's really just the point. That fits in nicely in there, which is quite a neat thing, and this is called the transmission. So this transmits the rotational action into a vertical or longitudinal action. And then you've got the pen itself. Now, a lot of these pens have a little bit of wax on the end to protect the roller ball. Sometimes you'll find that it doesn't fit through the hole, but in this case it does, so I don't have to take it off. It just stops the ink drying out. And now the process of assembly. You first start, just check that you get everything lined up. That's how we're going to do it. The mechanism there, and there's our pen. All quite simple. Now to do the pressing action, you can either get a pen press or you can use your tailstock. And on my tailstock I've got a little cup that I printed, which goes over the tailstock, which makes sure that you're pushing nice and along the axis. Put in the nib, and first thing is to align that up there, bring the tailstock up and wind it out. And now the important bit is that you keep this thing nice and square. Now my experience has been that this way that I do it here gives you the best control. I used to use a vise. This is nice and controlled, and you bring it right up until it seats. Not quite seated yet. There we go, beautifully seated. And the diameter matches. So that's the first bit done. It's quite important that you don't push this in too far too soon, because if you push it in too far you can't pull it back. So it's located there and it comes close up to that line there, but not completely there. So again, I bring up my tailstock, I line it up, and I start pressing into the barrel. So the brass section goes in, and you've got to be quite careful, because if this hole is not correct, it will stretch, and say if you've got too much glue residue in there, and it'll crack the wood, and then you're back to square one. So I've just got the brass in completely. I'm now going to take it out and check the depth. If I can just get this out of here. Okay, there it's out. I put in the pen, screwed in, and rotate it. And it retracts properly, but it needs to go in a wee bit further. So I would probably say 0.5 millimeter. So I'm going to do that. Back we go in, bring the tension up, and I'm going to take it in ever so slightly. There we go, and just watch it move. There we go, that looks good. It withdraws nicely and returns. That little collar slides on next. It's a bit of a press fit. There we go, the collar's on nicely. This bit's going to come on next. And now this is where I want to line I'm going to get that to cover a little bit of a mark there. So what I do now with my plug, I turn it around, clamp it, so now I've got a flat surface to a flat surface. Put that in over there, bring it up again. Line this up the way I wanted it, which is over there. See my tailstock. line that up, and press it in. So there you have it. Nicely pressed, there's no cracking anywhere. Now line the grains up again. So the light grain to the light grain, it's over there. And there you have it. One Slimline pen. Fully assembled, mechanism works nicely. Whoop. And because of the CA glue, you can drop it behind the lathe and you're fairly sure it's not going to make anything go wrong.